Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Men Seeking Wisdom. This is the four-man panel who are going through different books of the Bible. We're going through them chapter by chapter, verse by verse, and digging at the nuggets of wisdom in there we can find. We are all believers in God, and we are all believers in trying to bring the knowledge of Him to you out there. So that's why this project got together, and so I got three other great gentlemen here with me to help out. Let's just introduce everyone real quick. Russ, if you'll say hi, please.
Hey guys, I'm Russ. Man, a few words.
Matt.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Matt. I'm really excited about this. Last week after our show, guys, I just felt so happy, felt good, and then started getting messages from people in the community saying, I needed this, I'm struggling, and so I'm excited to be back doing this together with the four of us, and I'm grateful that episode 1 turned out good, and I'm hoping episode 2 is just as great.
Roger.
Yeah, it's again just an honor to be here. God is so good all the time, and I guess what we're trying to sort of say is that let's focus on that good aspect. And even though this particular book may have some downsides, we're seeking wisdom, we're seeking knowledge, because ultimately there is good news to know at the end.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Thank you, gentlemen. And yeah, I've been really looking forward to this too all week. I was really chomping at the bit to go again. I would have gone again the next day, but we all got things to do. So my name is David, and I had this insatiable need to understand things. And what more difficult subject is there than the Bible if you get down to it? There's a story here for everybody, and there's a story about everybody. And so we're going to do our darndest here to try to do justice to each verse here. For those, it was interesting you said that, Matt. I got some messages too, and there's a lot of messages, and there was a lot of comments on the very first video we did. People that we know, even some people, and they were all very, not so much, they were saying they were impressed, but they were just very pleased that we did something like this. And it sounds like a lot of these people out there are kind of afraid to say anything, in a way, and that's another message we want to put out there. Do not be afraid to share your love of God and Jesus. I mean, it tells you right here not to be. So don't let that stop you if you get the message in your own way, but we hope we can inspire more to do the same thing. So last week we started with the book of Job. Job is a very complex chapter, and some people in the comments even mentioned that it was a strange place for us to start because it's so difficult. But I think and most of the panel here on the panel here also believes that it's very analogous to what's going on in today's world, and has a lot of overreaching themes. So before we get started, guys, is there anything you want to lead off with?
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. So chapter 1, we saw basically God and Satan having a little palaver about what's going on the earth, and God basically put it to Satan that I have a perfect and righteous and upright man upon this earth, and why aren't you bothering him? And Satan, in all his vanity and semi-wisdom, says, well, I can't touch him because he's your favorite. And then God basically said, I'm going to remove my favor from him. Do as you please. At first, he does not start with Job as a person. He affects everything around him. And basically what happened to Job was, I think, the worst part of the book is right there at the beginning. He loses his entire family. He loses everything. His livelihood, and then his family, it's gone. You can replace the livelihood, you can't replace your family, and they're all wiped out. And everything happens in the space of a very short time. It just hits him over and over and over. And at the very end, in chapter 1, verse 22, it finishes off with, "In all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly." So Job has kept his faith. He's kept his obedience to God, and you almost see him holding his head up high, knowing, I still have a place in heaven, and, my God is still just and good, no matter what happens to me. So part 2, for those who have read this before, is when it starts getting really bad for Job. Because we're going to start off with another palaver here with God and Satan. And Satan's work on Job is not done yet, and Job's test is just begun. So I think last week, if you would, Roger, since you're the elder, if you'd like to go ahead and lead us off with chapter 2.
Yeah, be an honor. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, From whence cometh thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it.
See,
Do you want to talk a little bit about that before we go on?
Anyone else want to go first, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, here's Satan again.
Yep.
In charge of the earth, doing what he does. And here he comes again to the Lord to try to mess with Job. So.
And so basically, he looks like he has a conclave going here. The sons of God have come to present themselves, and once again, Satan being a creation of God originally, he has come too. I don't know whether he's invited or he just shows up. In my mind, he just shows up again. You know what I mean? But it's funny because there's a repeat, because he's saying basically two passages are almost identical in the first. And once again, we find Satan out there walking the earth. So he's out there and he's done his damage to Job so far. Then it seems like he's just out roaming around looking for more trouble to cause. But he comes back again. But once again, it's so much emphasis on how much free reign he has down here. He's out walking among the earth, and he's not up to any good, that's for sure. So, all right, let's see if anyone else has anything else. We'll move on.
Yeah, I just think it's poignant, like where you were saying that it says, the sons of God presented themselves. So we're talking about angels and other heavenly creatures here, and of course Satan was the angel of light. So yeah, it's just like you're right. It's like there's a crowd sort of having an audience. So there's a way for these beings to have an audience with God, obviously, without being too formal. And Satan just sort of snuck. It's like it's like you're all going into a building, and then some guy just sort of comes around the side and say, "Hey, I'm here too," because he was a creation of God. It doesn't stand out as much. But he's just such a creep that way.
He's awful. Yeah. It's like having a family reunion.
Any little way he can slide in there, he will. I just thought that was kind of like sort of suggested, that he's like not invited, but he just sort of snuck his way in there.
Just personality. It's what he tries to do in our lives all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Good parallel. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
I'm going to continue with 3 or somebody else. Yeah, okay. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a man perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil, and still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him to destroy him without cause.
Yep, so here we go again. It's another repeat of the same conversation they had before. And and once again, he just puts it to him. He's like, okay, well, you gave a really hard time to Job, but he's still there, despite what you've done. And he'll go a little further into that later, but yeah, he's like a homing beacon here. He keeps bringing Job up, and he's really riling Satan up here.
Yeah. I have this idea that's been in my head since I've reread this week, and it starts with integrity. Integrity is this principle that you have, these values that you have and that you hold. And the dictionary says the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness, right? So in chapter 1 and now in chapter 2, we get this idea of Job. Said it was perfect in chapter 1. He's full of integrity now. But we're going to see this guy that's done really well in his life go through some really hard things. And a lot of times, the people that I know in my life, when they're doing what God's asked them and then something bad happens to them, those that don't understand the way things work, or all of us even, sometimes will complain and will, why me? And that's going to be just a theme that we see throughout this. But seeing integrity here makes me, 1, want to be somebody that's full of integrity. And 2, it shows me no matter how well I'm living the gospel or keeping the commandments or doing the things that I need to, I'm not immune from mortality, And so it's just this theme that's in my head, and I guess we'll get into it more as the chapters go on. But I want to put that out there now. You know, Job is this upright, amazing, full of integrity guy, and we'll see what happens to him next.
We see here at the end, Matt, where he says, he says, "Thou movest me against him." In other words, I think what he's saying there is that he allowed him
Yep.
to do this. Satan can't do whatever he wants. He's not omnipotent. Let's make that clear, right?
Absolutely.
And he says to destroy him without cause. So that tells you, once again, that he was without sin. There was not any repercussion that he was being judged for here. It was Satan who is, again, trying to use this to say, God, you're wrong, So,
Absolutely.
All right.
You all right, Russ? Okay. You want me to go with 4?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
And Satan answered the Lord and said, "Skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life." What a dude. What a guy.
See, that's so indicative of Satan again. He has no concept. It's beyond his ken that someone could have a further aspiration. He sees all people as completely self-centered, completely self-serving, with no higher purpose. He hates humanity, and so he just can't believe any human being could have any skin in the game, as it were, other than what it suits, what it benefits them. So yeah, he still has no respect for Job, even though Job has gone through, the first of his tests, really.
His whole family destroyed, all his possessions, and what he's saying is that, well, yeah, but he personally wasn't hurt, not physically. It was everything around him. I think that's what you mentioned, David, initially. So he says, but a man for his life, he will give anything. He'll do anything. His integrity will go down the drain when his life is at stake. That's essentially what he's saying here. Again, contravening God and what he said about the perfection of Job.
I think a lot of us battle this idea of being self-centered and caring about our life more than anything, in varying degrees, right? I know that Jesus Christ said, "Greater love hath no man than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends," which is the exact opposite of what Satan's saying here, skin for skin. Like, if it's his life on the line, nothing else is going to matter. But the 4 of us were brought together because we love heroes. And I love the idea of the more that you become selfless, the more heroic and Christ-like you become.
Amen.
And the one thing that I love, one of the many things that I love about my wife is that she's a very selfless human being. Not only do I know that absolutely she would lay down her life for me or her children without a question, but she goes even further than that. She lives her life for us. Every breath, every waking moment she gives to us of herself. And I know I need to work on that more. And hearing this here and hearing Satan being, saying, well, if it's their life on the line, they're going to, it makes me kind of say, wait a second, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want Satan to be right. I want to be better than that. So that came into my mind right now as we were reading that verse.
And once again, and also kind of tagging on to that, it's once again just reiterating Satan's blindness in a way. Because, okay, I tested Job, I took all of his worldly possessions, I took his family, and he speaketh not ill against God, right? But that doesn't really mean anything, because those didn't really mean that much to him, right? So he won't renounce you, God, because those were just possessions. Even his family were just possessions. So the only thing he really cares about is his life. That's just the mentality of this guy. And if you can say this guy, but it's, I don't know, it's just so indicative. And he repeats a lot in this story. So, all right, Rustless, you got something to add?
Well, I was just thinking, through all this, Job didn't really crack, or let's just compare that to people now. To compare that to myself, like right now, I've got a cold, which is like nothing, but I want to crawl into bed and not get out for like a week. And Job's going through all this and he still didn't crack.
Yeah.
And that's just amazing at how strong he is, not in himself, but in the Lord.
Amen to that. And it's so great because once again, not to harp on it, but this right here gives you examples. And there's so many good examples of how to live your life in this. And you can't all be as perfect as Job. I mean, none of us really are. It's so hard to live up to some of these stories sometimes. But you have something to live up to. Otherwise, you're just out there hanging in the breeze. You have nothing to strive for. You don't have any direction in your life. And it's just so nice to have something of a blueprint right here. People to look up to. And like you said earlier, Matt, we're all big fans of heroes in this panel. That's how we all came together. It's through a shared hobby. And the main part of the hobby is people doing heroic things, being selfless. Those are the most memorable heroes there are out there. And, we can all do that in some small measure if we just strain and strive to be like the people that are in this book a lot of times. So, all right, let's hit number 5, shall we? Or verse 5.
Yeah, and Russ, but you didn't stay in bed.
Mm-hmm.
You could have called us and said, "Hey, listen, I can't do it today." You didn't do that.
Yep.
Right? So, thank you, Lord, for that.
Wow.
All right. What did I leave off?
Should be in verse
4,
5,
right?
yeah.
We're never verse 5, right? Yeah. All right. Oh yeah. Man, this gets me so upset.
Mm-hmm.
But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. Again, he just keeps upping the ante here, and he says, "Well, yeah, but if it's painful, touch his bone and his flesh, he will curse thee." Man, I mean, it's. Yeah, he knows, that's sort of the sour grapes part of the adversary, is that he knows he's going in the lake of fire. So the only thing he has, well, not the only thing, but one of the things that he likes to do is to bring down as many people with him.
Yep.
And to puff himself up because he knows his time is limited. But this gets me like, upset.
And this is like another good example of Satan's petulance here too, because he's like, well, he did this, but he came through. But if you do this, then he'll do like I say, It's like he's a child trying to win a bet here, and you can tell he has nothing but disdain for Job, unfortunately for Job there. So, okay, I guess we can do verse 6 now.
And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, he is thine. Behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life.
Yeah, so everything.
So once again, can't kill him, but you can do anything else you want to him, in body and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. 7. So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown.
When they say head to toe, they mean head to toe. And back then
it probably wasn't a place that. Yeah.
They didn't have.
It probably was not only head to toe, but everywhere around. I'm sure, especially when the friends see him and they don't even recognize him. That tells you. Yeah.
And you got to remember the time period too. There's no painkillers, there's no salves, there's nothing like that. And if you think just a regular disease is bad, imagine one that Satan throws on you. This is not probably any regular boil either. You know what I mean? So these are just the most horrendous things he managed. Imagine you can't lay there comfortably. Anytime you move, you're like opening these things up, and it just hurts. And all right,
it's probably some very severe form of like leprosy and dermatitis, and who knows what else. Maybe things that are even not around anymore. Who knows?
Well, verse 8 is going to give us some pretty hardcore imagery.
Yeah.
If you want to read it, and then we can discuss that.
All right. Yeah. And he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes.
I just see him in the ashes of his children's home that was burnt, breaking a pot, taking a shard, and then literally trying to cut off the boils from his body as he's sitting there in pain, emotionally taxed, wondering why is this happening, you know? In this moment, I think if you can think of Job here in your hardest times, you know, we've all kind of been there. We've been in the ashes of something that fell apart in our life or something that happened, and we've just wished we could scrape it away from us in our sorrow, you know? And so it's for me, I see him and my heart just goes out to him, you know?
Yeah. It's not enough that he's lost, his family, his possessions. Now he's lost his health. Now he's in pain. Can you, when I suffer from kidney stones. When you have a kidney stone, you can't think. You're totally paralyzed essentially. There's nothing you can do. And to have every single part of your body in severe turmoil like this, I can't think of anything much worse than this, honestly.
Yeah.
And yet, when you have to take a pot and the edge of a pot to scrape out, who knows the pus, and who knows if it's itching and irritated. It blows my mind, honestly.
Yeah.
All right. Matt, did you want to read some, or do you want to read, or who wants to read a little bit next? Sure.
Love to.
All right. If you'll hit us with verse 9, please.
All right, 9. Then said his wife unto him, dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. Oh, man.
So
he's got his wife.
Mm-hmm.
It's them two left. And she's seeing things from a very sorrowful, dark place. And she's looking at him. She's like, you still have your integrity? Just curse God and die. I mean, he's doing this to you. So even his confidant, his strength at this point is like, just giving up.
Just give up.
And we got to try to put ourselves in her mind a little bit too, because she's just lost an entire family as well. Now her body's not afflicted, but she's lost everything as well. So who knows where their food's going to come from? They have no children anymore. It's gotta be awful. Now her husband's taken to his basically sick bed. So yeah, she's not the most supportive right now. And then here's her husband, steadfastly trudging on in his love for God, and she can be a really good allegory to people in your life. And a lot of his friends further on down are like this, and people who will get you to try to question your love for God, or to even try to question his plan just because things aren't going so great for you. The people always try to steer you off the path. They're always looking for reasons to get you away from, the glory of God. And sometimes without good reason, kind of like the adversary in here, right? So you just got to always remember that even the closest to you and your strongest, best friends, loved ones, wife, whatever, spouse,
Family.
they can test you. And so that's another part of the story. So anyway, 10 it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's see, someone else has something further.
Yeah, but only one thing that I thought of here, and I've meditated on this, and my attitude has changed over the years about the wife here. And one is that Satan has been trying to get Job. He couldn't get Job, but he got the wife. All the stresses and all the loss and all the pain got to her. But you know what? I find myself being too judgmental of her because, like you said, David, can you imagine if I lose one person, I am despondent. Can you imagine losing your whole family and then this happening and she not knowing what this might be the beginning of his death?
Yeah.
So maybe she's trying to ease his pain by saying, just die, that way, you no longer have to worry about things, and you won't be in the pain that I'm in. I've gone back and forth with the wife's attitude here, and I've kind of mellowed on her a little bit in the understanding of the incredible pain and anguish and despair that she's going through at this time.
Yeah.
So I guess to me, I'm looking at it, be careful how you judge people because there's so much behind the scenes and maybe we're not aware of. You're right, though, that, regardless, you should not tell them to curse God, certainly.
Right.
But I think it's a little more, you have to be a little more understanding of the pain that she was going through and how people can react through that pain. It may not be her talking necessarily, but all the anguish that is built up in her.
Yeah. I've done a lot of missionary work in my life, and I've come across people that have a problem with Christianity, and a lot of the times when I talk to them and get down to it, it's because they felt judged by the world. They felt judged by people, right?
Right.
And so one of the things that we have to learn to do better is, God gives commandments, like don't curse God, right? We all agree we shouldn't curse God.
Don't use my name in vain. That's right.
So we know that we have to share that with the world, but at the same time, we also have to see the other side of it. We've got to be willing, like you just said, to have compassion for people that don't understand that, And one of the things that I teach my children all the time is, you guys are growing up in a house where we're reading our scriptures on a daily basis. You guys are going to church every single Sunday. You guys are learning from mom and dad how to act in the world and what's right and what's wrong. But your friends at school, they're in homes where their parents are having them do the opposite and teaching them things that you're not learning here. And so if you look at your friends and say, hey, you're doing X, Y, and Z, and you're judging them from your knowledge, you're doing it wrong. What you've got to do is reach out to them in love, and again, I'll go back to this: love one another. He who's without sin cast the first stone, right? There's so many examples. Mm-hmm. We have to learn to say, okay, this is what God has asked us to share with you, but I'm going to share it with you and give you time to get it, to comprehend it and understand it. And even if you reject me, and even if you reject the message I'm bringing from God, I'm still going to love you, And so I really like that you said that, Roger, because I hadn't thought of that before. And you got me thinking in my head, I got to have so much more compassion than I do. And so thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Well, again, I didn't come up with that just today. That was many years of studying and looking at this and trying to understand. And that's what we're here for, right? We're trying to understand what the word is telling us. And it could speak to us in many different ways.
Absolutely.
But you have to put things into context. Like you said, you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes of somebody's life. So that's why we can't judge, because we don't know. We don't have all the facts.
Right.
That's why we leave it up to the guy who's omniscient, who knows everything.
Yep.
We know very little.
Absolutely.
There's another possible little nuance too with the wife here. If you look at the last sentence there, when she says to curse God and die, this also lends itself to possibly two other alternatives to her state of mind. First off is the less righteous one, where she wants him to take the easy path, right? Okay, she sees he's suffering, and she's like, you know what, just curse God and get it over with. And that's just easy, it's quick, you won't have to go through all this. But the maybe a little more righteous part on her part is her knowing that if he were to do this, God would take him quickly and end his suffering. So maybe it wasn't in a malicious way that she's doing this. It's not a whole lot here to go with, so it's kind of hard to say. But so there's that aspect too. But you can tell that they both fear God, because she even says right here, if you curse God, you will die. So yeah, she's asking him to do the ultimate, to either relieve his suffering, or just because she's so overwrought with what's going on, and she doesn't have the strength of character that Job does. So who's to know? But maybe we'll find out here in further readings. So you have anything else, or Russ, do you have anything? Let's move on.
Well, honestly, I've never really thought about that. I've never considered her point of view and what was going on. I'd always just focused on Job when I was reading. So I can definitely see where you're coming from, Roger. So her point of view, because she lost everything too. I'd never considered that before.
Yep.
All right, I guess we'll do verse 10 now.
All right, 10. But he said unto her, Thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this did not Job sin with his lips. Love this. Love it.
This is strong stuff here. Oof.
How can you have so much wisdom, being through the mental state he's got to be in right now, being in the physical pain and agony he's in now? Then he's got the wife is harping at him on the left side to denounce God. So once again, the man's gotten the worst of everything, and he's like, well, should we not get that? I mean, just because we believe and love God doesn't mean that bad things can't happen. So is our faith so weak that we only believe in God when things are going well and not when they're going ill? Job's quite a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this there's many ways we can talk about this, right? But the one thing that I get is how well God knows us.
Yes.
Okay? This tells me how none of us here could have gone through this, but he knew that Job could. Like you said, David, what incredible character he must have to have lost everything, to be in abject pain, to have even the last vestiges of a healthy person, his wife, tell him to die, and yet he still is saying, and he doesn't even insult her. Notice here, he says, "You speak as a foolish woman." He doesn't say that she's foolish.
Right.
Okay, so that tells you the respect that and the love he has for his wife, knowing that really she is a good woman, but realizes the situation is just a phenomenal situation to be in, that nobody could be expected to react in a shall we say in a positive way to what has occurred.
Yeah.
What an amazing man this Job. I mean, just absolutely amazing, beyond the pale in every way.
Yeah. I think it's a truth of life that attitude almost is everything, right? We're all going to be blessed. Every day you wake up, you can smell, you can taste, you can hear, you can see, right? You can go out and see the sun shining, you can experience mortality, you can kiss a family member, or, talk to a friend, whatever. There's so many gifts and blessings, so much goodness in life, right? But I've noticed that when the bad things come and hard things happen, we forget all of that. We forget all of the gifts and all of the blessings that we had. And depending on who we are, there's, the balance is different, But I love that he puts it into perspective here, because if we forget everything God's done for us, then of course all we're going to do is focus on the bad, the immediate, what's happening right now, and have the wrong attitude, I would think. And if we remember God at all times, remember the good that he's done for us, the blessings that we've had, the good times that we've had when something bad is happening, I personally have found that it helps me to stay positive, and it helps me to get through the hard times that I'm going through smoother. So I love that he says that, and it just brings that to my mind.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. I really like that perspective. It's not one of these, what have you done for me lately?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's and again, there's so much here I could talk, but I'm just going to say this one other thing, and I'll be quiet. Okay, is that, look at what he says here. Shall we receive good at the hand of God and not receive evil? So what is he saying there? Hey, God doesn't owe me anything.
Yep.
Okay, what I had was based on his provision. Okay, so I'm going to focus on what he gave me, not on what I don't have today, which is sort of piggybacks on what you're saying there, Matt.
Yeah.
It's, again, the character of this man. I mean, if I had 1.000.1 of what he had, boy, I would be like, I would be up there, just amazing when you look and analyze this verse. Thanksgiving, wisdom, long suffering. You can go on and on and on. Just in one verse.
Yeah.
Man, God is good. I tell you, amazing.
Absolutely.
And something else too that really is remarkable about this verse is it's like of basically everyone else in the story, only Job realizes that God has a plan, right? His plan doesn't maybe the plan is to have something bad happen to you. That is part of the plan. So Job here is like, well, who am I to say that since God decided to have or let bad things happen to me, that wasn't part of the plan to begin with? It's just his vision is so far-reaching here, and the very last sentence also speaks so much to his character. And all this did not Job sin with his lips. So not only did he not curse God, he didn't even say a curse word. He didn't speak ill. He didn't complain. All those little things. He didn't get petty and let vanity take over. So he wouldn't even speak a bad word. That's how good this man is on his worst day. And once again, that just lends itself so well to the example that the book here has laid out for us. Try to be virtuous when times are tough. Try to retain your faith. Try to retain your goodness and your humanity. And that's another reason this book is just so amazing right now, and it's very easy, as you guys said, that to get wrapped up in your own little cocoon. Even things couldn't even be that bad. You could, like I said, you could have the milk could have spoiled in your fridge, and you're mad because you wasted $3 or whatever, and you might curse under your breath or say, I don't deserve this. So you got perspective right here. Perspective. It's like maybe it's not quite so bad. So, and there's a plan. Just at the first hiccup, don't denounce the plan. If you truly believe in your heart, you have a plan. God has a plan for your life. Don't sweat the small stuff, and just and don't denounce him because he makes it difficult for you sometimes.
Hey guys, I gotta take a phone call real quick. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
In the meantime, so guys, while he's talking there, so any new revelations that we've had here, no pun intended, about the book of Job?
Well, it's like Roger was saying. If any of us just had like 1% of what Job had, and what he endured, the things that happened to us in our lives were small compared to what happened to Job, but to us they were huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had something happen once, and I spent 6 months pretty much in my pajamas, not leaving my house. But in the grand scheme of things, looking back now, I can see where my plan didn't line up with God's plan. And I think that's very important to this story. The plans that we might have might not line up with God's plans. So when we consider something went wrong, in God's eyes, he's just steering us in the right path towards something better.
Yeah, I mean, and nothing opens your eyes more
I think that is seeking wisdom right there.
Yeah, that's definitely a man seeking wisdom right there.
Looking back, right? Looking back, and you look at the situation. At that point, you have a certain perspective, but now you've grown in wisdom. You look back, maybe there was a purpose for that.
Yeah. Then
that happened to me. It happened to me, bro. 100% happened to me.
Then I just thought it was the worst thing ever. I just wanted to give up, crawl in a hole, and never come out. And now, I was, hindsight. If you knew now, back then, what your path was or where it was leading you, might not have been so bad.
And that's not to say that. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, but again, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm just saying that now that you know that, the next time that you can recognize the situation's coming, you'll react differently because you have that hindsight, that wisdom. That's all.
Yeah. That's why I think that God allows things to happen to us, because he sees the future and that we can come through it. And I believe if you've never been through anything, you can't help somebody else that's going through it now.
Got it.
It's pretty hard to listen to somebody who's had a charmed life, and once again, talking about Job had a very charmed life. He had a very blessed life to begin with. So maybe the book wouldn't be that interesting if the whole thing was 3 chapters long and said God or Job died a righteous man, still loving God and God loving him the whole time. God never stopped loving Job, but I mean, just the point is that maybe people wouldn't have anything to look at. It's like, well, he didn't really go anything, so how could his faith ever been tested? So it's just, I don't know. That's kind of the example I see there too. And it's not to say too that anyone's problems are small or insignificant.
No.
Every person's problems are important, and Russ, what you went through was horrible. I've met people in very similar positions in life, and some people didn't make it through. So it can be a horrible pit of despair to fall into. But I just find it very comforting, at least, that there's some examples in the book of people who had hard times too. So once again, it's not that I want to read about people's misery or tribulations or whatever, but it is nice to know that there's a human element in the Bible here, in the fact that these people weren't perfect. They didn't always have great lives, but the ones that follow God's plan usually did pretty well for themselves in the end.
Yeah.
So
not to go off subject too much, but if I may just get into a little bit of a personal testimony, is that okay? Uh, growing up, I didn't. There's different things happened growing up where I had, hard times here and there. But I never set foot into a church until I was 17 years old. I didn't have that foundation in God growing up. So looking back now, I can see though where God had His hand in my life and protected me through certain areas. Otherwise, I don't think I would have survived because I was a rotten kid. No doubt about it. And so I can see both sides of being. I don't, I don't, I'm not sure exactly how to put it into words, but I can see looking looking at it from both sides. From Job and his wife, how she said curse God and die, and how Job still had that integrity to not do that. Anyway, it just kind of Job's story touched me personally because it was one of the first stories I heard when I did start going to church. Because I went for like a year straight before I even talked to anybody or said anything. I would just go in, I would sit there, I would look at the back of the chair in front of me, and that was it. And for some reason, I just kept going. And then when I turned 18, one night I woke my mom up and I asked her to lead me to God in prayer. And that was where my life really changed. And it was this was one of the first messages I heard when I went to church. So the book of Job has always been kind of special to me.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I kind of grew up
Fabulous.
like you. I didn't have any religious foundation at all. I was made to go to church when I was younger, but it was just kind of perfunctory, send the kid off to church, and maybe the household do well because of it. They didn't go, but I was dropped off at church, and so I stopped going in my teens and even until my 30s and stuff. And I just, it's funny. If you look back now, I see all those little touches by the hand of God that kept me safe, kept me questioning things, but kept me like looking forward, despite when things got bad or whatever. So. Yeah, not all of us are going to grow up in a Job type household, or in your case, Matt's household or Roger's household, where there's a strong religious upbringing. There's a strong value. You learn about strong values young on through example, not just from TV and the internet and that sort of thing. So, yeah, there's a lot to be had here for even those who have not stepped foot into a church or have never opened a Bible before. So. That's another reason we're doing this today, is to maybe help bring the church to you just a little bit, and maybe the little bit of knowledge that we're reading about here can, kind of energize you to go out and seek some of your own. And I guarantee you won't be disappointed. So good to have you back, Matt. If you want, do you want me to finish up, or do you want to keep reading?
Yeah, let's do it. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem at all.
All right. Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that was come upon him, they came every one from his own place. Eliphaz the Telamite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. For they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. So his friends want to come take care of him, and they're coming together to help.
Yep, they've heard.
Yeah. And when they lifted up their eyes afar off, and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept, and they rent everyone his mantle and sprinkled dust upon their heads toward heaven. 13. So they sat down with him upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was very great.
There it is. And 12 is an interesting little verse there,
Yeah.
and where they say, and when they lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not. So basically, maybe across the room or across the pasture, they looked and saw Job and didn't recognize him. This is how disfigured he is from all the stuff that's happening to him, the boils and all that. I'm sure he's hunched over or whatever in pain. So it's like even his best friends don't recognize the man. This is how bad he's been. That the hand of Satan has been laid upon him, you know. Awful, awful stuff.
I like that the three friends made an appointment, so they came together. Somebody found out what was going on, and they said, let's go down there together to comfort him. Okay, and so they had the best intentions in mind at this point. Mm-hmm. They were true friends. They saw somebody that a friend, somebody that they loved that was in need, and they obviously wanted to go there to help out in any way they could. So the best of intentions at this point from three friends, and they were from three different regions and so forth. I'm not going to get too much into that, and like you're right. But then can you imagine the shock of you going to see a friend and just seeing the state he's in, and so bad that you don't even recognize who it is? That tells you the degree of disfigurement and of when they didn't recognize him. Not only didn't they recognize him physically, they didn't even recognize anything about him. Yeah. So it tells you that that he had been transformed essentially, but inside he was the same. It's just that out in the outer, and that's something that we have to talk about, right? That sometimes we are very judgmental about the outside of people, what we look like physically, Yeah. And those are the kinds of traps that we have to be very, very careful about, because God doesn't look at this. This is the shell essentially that we wear for our soul and our spirit. And but this is kind of an analogy to me of that we have to be very careful. And they didn't they didn't leave, but they were in shock. They were astonished to see, from what they knew of him to what he was now. And that kind of plays into what happens later on. But very poignant that they did come together to try to help a friend. And that's a lesson for us as well. When we see somebody suffering, we shouldn't just say, God's judging them. Let's let them handle it, because, and we still comfort regardless of what the situation is behind it.
October 9th, 2018 it was. I woke up, October 9th. A good friend of mine passed away. And on my birthday the next day, that morning, woke up excited to celebrate my birthday. And then we get a phone call from another friend saying, hey, so-and-so passed away last night, had a sudden heart attack, left a family of 5 behind. Young family, And I struggled for a while to think about how I was going to talk to the family members that were remaining after something like this happened, something sudden, something horrible, and I've seen a lot of people just do it the wrong way. I saw people while we went to the home and we were there with them, and I saw people come and say, my dog died last year and I understand what it's like to lose your husband, and I'm like, don't say stuff like that right now, And the one thing that I love about what you said is that these friends came together because they had good intentions, and I went over there and I decided the only thing I could tell them is that I loved them. And I told them I loved them, and I cried with them in my arms, every single one of them, And I saw a lot of people, and we're going to get into this. That's why I have it in my mind, these friends here and what they're going to be telling Job while he's suffering, and the advice that they're going to give him. And I saw a lot of people give some bad advice to my friends and to kind of shame them when they were suffering and to make them feel bad about, the things that they were feeling. And then I saw other people just do it the right way. And the one thing that I've learned and that pops up in my mind is just love people. If you truly want to share the gospel or your idea of what they should be, how they should be reacting, just hang on to it for a little bit. Keep it to yourself for a little bit. Let people know you love them as they're suffering. And then when the time comes, they'll open up to you and ask, what do you think I should do? at that point you can have a discussion with someone, But as long as somebody, when they're struggling, when they're suffering, no matter what it is, death, something self-caused, being scared, whatever, if you just love your friends and you're just there and they know you love them, you'll eventually get to share the things of your heart and the things that God would have you say to them at the right time. So that kind of just came to my mind because I remember that, and we're about to see that here pretty soon in the next couple chapters.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, and they obviously did love him because it says here that they wept. I mean, you don't weep unless you have an emotional attachment.
Yes.
And love is much more than an emotion, but that's for another lesson. But certainly so they were, and they rent, and they threw ashes. So they were in grief and in sorrow, right? Those are the Hebrew expressions of grief and sorrow.
Yeah.
So obviously they were close friends at some point.
Yeah.
And this is, like you said, Matt, this is a setup for what's going on later. And notice what at the end here again, and this is the respect that they had for this man. They didn't go in there and just start carrying on. They knew he was in grief. They knew that he was in pain. So what did they do? They sat down there for 7 days and 7 nights and didn't say a word. Okay. Because that's the traditional, I believe, the traditional grieving period.
Yes.
At the time was a week. So again, they were respectful, they were loving, they came to comfort him. So far, everything is looking like they're acting in good faith and they're doing well.
Yeah. This.
But we'll see what happens later on.
Yeah. But this does set up the friends very well, right? It shows them to be men of character. They're weeping for Job, right? He's not dead. Usually, if men weep, usually someone has died. This is how bad's Job's situation. They're weeping for Job's situation here, his illness, his loss of family, and everything. Something else I think this also points out, getting back away from the friends for a second, this shows you just how alone Job is. These people had to come from far away, right, to comfort him. But he has no family to comfort him anymore. He has nobody but like friends that can come. No one in his community can help him. Or comfort him at all. So Job is a man alone until these guys show up, but he's not alone. He has God with him, and he comes to find out that's all he needs later on. But that's the story for another day. So we don't even know if his wife is helping him like in comfort right now. Maybe he's still angry with her. Maybe she's still chiding him to curse God and all that. So yeah, he has to have outside people to come in to comfort him, and poor Job, once again, a man alone, but now his friends are there, so he's going to get bolstered up, right? And as you said, Roger, they're wise. Who wants to hear, like, oh, I've had, pain in my life too, when you're sitting there in misery and suffering? You don't want to hear that. Just the comfort of having a friend close or loved one close is really all you do need, and you draw strength from that. So they were wise enough, and this goes to show that these men were wise enough to not say a word. And we'll let Job come to us. When he's ready to talk about it, we'll talk about it. But in the meantime, he can take comfort in knowing that we're here for him. And a lot of times too, when people are in a long time illness, they have to like bolster up the people that are visiting them. You know what I mean? It's a weird dynamic, man, because people they're grieving in their own way and they don't handle it too well. And so a lot of times the person who's on their deathbed or extremely ill has to try to cheer that person up. And that's a rough thing to do when you're sick, So, but Job, he kept quiet. I can see him with this look of consternation on his face, but still, a look of determination as well. And there's just 3 guys sitting around him. A lot of allegory right there too, So yeah, so that's the end of the chapter, guys. Another powerhouse. Unfortunately, it's not in a good way, but it is in a good way. There's a happier ending to this. There's a reason for all of this. And, but yeah, Job's having a rough time of it. So, thoughts about chapter 2 here?
Well, again, we're this is an untenable situation, guys. It's something that is hard. We can relate to it in perhaps a perfunctory way, but not to the depths of what we have read through here. Like Russ was saying, that this is something when he first started, he got. I think that's not by mistake, Russ, because this is so powerful. I mean, you can't read this and have a heart and not have a response, a spiritual, emotional response to this, in my opinion. Okay, and yeah, you're right. A lot of people were saying in the comments that, hey, we're biting off a big chunk here of doctrine, right? And that's true. I agree with that. But that being said, I think we've broken it down to smaller morsels here and there, and we can see that we can see certain things, that Satan is not all powerful. He needs permission to do a lot of his damage. That he is essentially self-conceited. Okay, and he although he knows the outcome of his essentially his destiny, that he is the ultimate sour grapes guy, and he just wants to make as much suffering as he can for all of us, and especially when you think about at this point the closest man to God, right, is Job. And again, we can get into Job as sort of a foreshadowing of Christ here because of his non-sinful nature, but later on he does have some vacillations. But honestly, I am just enthralled. I've probably read this passages hundreds of times. Every time I read it, I learn something else. And now talking to you guys, I've learned even more. So hopefully you guys out there that are seeing this, maybe you have some kind of revelation or input. I'd like to know, because I don't think there's any bad knowledge here. I think we can discuss things and see it through a discerning eye, and try to see where God is leading us in this. There's lessons here for everybody, I believe. So I guess I didn't really answer the question there, David, but I just think that, to me, this is something that is, if we look at it with an honest eye, we can all, I don't care what situation you're in, we can all learn something about ourselves and about our relationship with God.
Yeah,
Into that.
That's
Go ahead, Russ.
Go ahead. That's very true what Roger was saying. There's something in here for everyone. If you come at it with an open mind and an open heart, you can read the same chapter 4 or 5 different times, and you're going to see something new revealed every single time. No matter what you're going through in life, there's an answer in this book for you.
Agree.
Yep.
Amen.
I'm into that.
Agree.
Poor Job. That's all I can say is poor Job. We're lucky. We don't really have to go into great detail. We don't see in great detail in the book of what's really happening to his body and his mind and his torment. We have to kind of put that in our own minds. And for us to analyze that, it may bring us a little closer to the actual story. And it also allows us to match it up with something that's going on in our life. It's like, okay, so he has boils. I had skin lesions or something at a time, and it was giving me pain. Okay, now imagine that was over my whole body. So you can start to kind of, empathize more with the story from what you're given here. It also teaches you, at least this story, it also teaches you the value of friendship. I mean, once again, we're 2 chapters in, and now his only real lifeline are these 3 friends that are coming, because he's lost everything else. So it's very important to keep your good friends close and love them. And, they wept for Job. That was the deepness of their love for him. So be the same way with your friends. Keep the friends and people around you that you love, and, always cherish them, because your time of need could come one day and you may need to draw on their strength. It's just an amazing story. And yes, it is complex to get into, but if we couldn't handle it, I don't think we would have been drawn to the story. And, I don't know. It's just good. Go ahead, Matt.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, man. You guys, when I got back from my phone call earlier, you guys were talking about growing up and the lives that you had and stuff, and I heard Russ say something very powerful about him at 18, waking his mom up, and I felt the spirit there when he said that, But I'll tell you this, since I was young, I was raised in a home where we read the scriptures, we went to church, we were taught to repent and to try better and keep the commandments and those type of things. And so I've read a lot of scripture in my life, and I remember being little, and we would read a scripture like Job, and I would have a confirmation by the Spirit. I would feel in my heart that was true. And after I'd have that feeling, then it would inspire me. The scriptures truly, truly inspire me as a human being. I have a desire to be the best me that I can be. I have a desire to grow and to become better every day. And every time I read the scriptures, I'm inspired. And what that does for me is I've had moments in my life where they've been hard. I've seen some hard things. And in those moments, I always remember the inspiration that I felt from different people that truly lived and truly went through things. And then it helps me in those exact moments to be just a little bit better than I would have been without knowing that knowledge. Sometimes a lot better than I would have been. And so I think, we're not all going to be Job. Some of us are going to be Job's wife. Some of us are going to be Job's friends. Some of us are going to be the children that lose that lose. We never know what God's going to call for us to go through. But again, the message for me is the greatest inspiration I've ever had is when I learn about Jesus. And no matter how much I fail or how well I do, He can help me get through it. And so I'm real grateful for the scriptures. I'm real grateful for Job and everything he went through. And I'm real grateful to be able to mix that with my knowledge of Christ and say, okay, sometimes I'm going to fail and not react or do the best in a situation, but I can always be better next time. And other times I'm going to say, hey, I'm going through this right now. I remember Job did this. Let me do my best in this moment. And I just have to say, I just love the scriptures, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful that we get this opportunity to talk and do this kind of stuff.
Amen to that.
Agreed.
What we're gonna go ahead and probably end it here with chapter 2. I'm gonna guess we're gonna dedicate an entire episode possibly to chapter 3, and then we will start doing probably a little more cliff notes toward the center portion, because a lot of this is testifying about places where people lived and all that, and it can get a little bit long, and there's not always something to say for everything. So we'll probably go through and and pick out really important stuff, and probably pick it up with Elihu, and read straight through from there, because that's where it gets really pertinent. And of course, God shows up in 38, so you can't be skipping that. So, but yeah, I think it's been a great chapter today. There's a lot of wisdom in there, and it's just a mistake to look on this as a completely negative chapter. I think there's a lot of good in this if you can just look for it. The example's there. You just got to find it. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this, right? So if you guys would like, I'll go ahead and do a closing verse if you want, and then we'll see about editing this up and getting it posted. I'm going to be reading from Ecclesiastes 7, verse 1, if y'all want to read with me there. I'll give you a moment here to find it. It's a quick one, but I think it's a good closing verse. And it has sort of relevance with what's going on with Job, too.
7:1, you
Yes.
said? Okay.
All right.
I'm there too.
All right, here we go. So, Ecclesiastes 7, chapter 7, verse 1. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. So, don't get too caught up in the mortal coil. In other words, but anyway, I think it's a great closer. And it's another word of hope, and so there's more beyond. So anyway, I think that's it. So, any last words from anybody before we sign off?
Be safe out there and love each other.
That's all we can do,
Absolutely.
man.
It's all, love each other like Christ loved the church, right? And that is sacrificially too. And thank you for being here. Thank you for not only just watching, but hopefully adding something here in the comments. I really when those comments came, guys, I read everyone like devoured it, because I learn from everything that is around me, and so I want to learn. So let us know what you think, because it is important and it is read.
Yeah,
I was very thrilled about the response we got from the first video. I'm just going to reiterate that again. We had a lot of views on it. We had a lot of comments on it, and it's just exactly what we want. That's the whole reason we're doing this, is to get the word out there and to hopefully give some stories of inspiration to those out there that are seeking them. Great to have everyone in the comments. Great to have everyone that's viewing. There's going to be plenty more of this, where this came from. Like I said, just let us know down in the comments below what you're thinking so far, and if you've maybe learn something new from the book itself, or just if you like the direction the series is going, we love to hear from you. And Russ, I really want to thank you for sharing that with us today. It's not easy to talk about personal things, especially to a gigantic crowd, and it's so it's under the best of circumstances, it's not easy. So I do appreciate you sharing that with us, and it is inspirational. And with that said, I think we'll go ahead and close up. But thanks again for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll be back here in another week to go over Job chapter 3 and to see where the story takes us from there. So until that time, this is Men Seeking Wisdom. Stay safe, stay blessed. Love God. Goodbye, everyone.